The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jamison Rabbit, and this week I am once again joined by my old friend, it's Jeff Robbins. Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. It's my honor. And you know what? It's the audience's pleasure to have you here.
At what point in the show do I give my State of the City address?
You save that to the end if we have time.
Hope we have time for that.
Got
a lot to say.
We'll give you the high sign. You go right into it.
Okay.
But first off, we're here to talk about a bunch of movies.
Oh, that's what this show is.
Luckily, there were movies in the theater this week so that we could talk about them.
On the marquee.
On the marquee.
Nothing but on the marquee this week.
This week, I'm going to get us started with the first film we have. It is a film called Cyrano from director Joe Wright. It is Joe Wright's, he brings us the latest adaptation of Edmond Rostan's Cyrano de Bergerac story. You've seen it, you love it. It's a story of misunderstandings and star-crossed love. Cyrano, in this film played by Peter Dinklage, is a pompous, verbose writer of his time. He stands out amongst others, though, because of his height, where rather than his nose. In this version, the freak show, in quotes, nature of Cyrano is that he is short. He has been pining for his longtime friend Roxanne, played by Haley Bennett. Roxanne, however, has caught sight of another man from across a crowded room and is instantly in love. She knows nothing about this man, who we come to find out is a man named Christian, played by Calvin Harrison Jr. Christian is also in love with the beautiful woman he caught a glance of. So we have this case of love, and we get the heartbreaking scene where Roxanne and Cyrano meet in private. They've been friends forever. Cyrano, he's readying to profess his love for her, and she is giddy to share her secret that she's in love, only to find out that it's not with him. And so a heartbroken Cyrano decides that if he can't be the one to be with her, his words will be the way to love her. And he brokers a deal with Christian, who is not as educated or profound with his words, that Cyrano will help seduce Roxanne for him. And so we have your classic story, the story of how to trick a woman into loving someone. It's well-trodden territory as a story. I don't know about you, I often struggle with this story. There have been dozens of film adaptations, and I feel like every sitcom has done a Cyrano episode where we have to trick this girl into loving. It's the story. And the Roxanne character is usually portrayed as kind of a pawn in a game. And I always have issues with that.
Well, that's kind of what she is, right?
Yeah. It's just two guys being like, that would trick this dumb broad.
Sure.
And then
Isn't your voice an octave lower? No, of course not.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like in this version, for me, Haley Bennett's version of Roxanne kind of came off as shallow and kind of vacant to me. I don't know.
I thought she was kind of mean, actually, because, we've all seen this story many times, and so nothing really comes as a surprise
right.
in this story. But the scene where Christian finally talks to her without Cyrano's help, and he says basically all he can think of to say is that he loves her.
She storms off. Do better.
She's like a flower. Saying, I will. How dare you say I'm a flower?
Yeah.
I need better than that. And kind of unlikable. Yeah.
That's tough though. When she's the center of a love triangle, basically. It's like, yeah, she's okay.
Yeah, okay.
What did you think about them using, because the Cyrano, he's got a big nose. Who could love a man with that big schnoz?
How many adaptations of this work have there been? Because I'm not the cinema completist that you are. I think I've only seen the Steve Martin version.
Roxanne, which I think is the best version of it. And that's not even, I wouldn't even call that a direct, so there's been 11 theatrical direct adaptations of the Cyrano story.
How many are on Criterion?
At least 3.
Okay.
And then there's dozens of other films and dozens of sitcom episodes that have kind of aped this story. I think Roxanne's the most famous
I think there's a Three's Company episode where
there has to be.
Jack's
That's every episode?
Jack's playing a guitar and, yeah. Larry Dallas is in the background.
There's a misunderstanding. What did you think of Cyrano?
Well, it was different this time because of the dwarfism of this Cyrano, Peter Dinklage.
Right.
One thing you haven't mentioned at all, Mr. Rabbit, so I'll fill that void, is that this is a musical.
Right. Yes.
This is an adaptation of a stage musical that was fronted or put up or staged in 2019. And I have to tell you that I didn't care for too many of the songs.
I don't feel like any of the songs moved me or really stuck with me. And I felt like they were like auto-tuned.
I didn't walk out of the theater humming any of them.
No, not at all. I feel like the songs detracted from a lot of what was going on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you see the character Christian is supposed to be a bit of a dolt because he's inarticulate and just not very bright, and then you see him singing these eloquent, flowery songs, and it's just kind of doesn't really match up.
I agree.
Well. Yeah. I think I agree with you that I didn't find any of the characters. I guess I found Kelvin Harrison Jr. I found his character to be somewhat empathetic because he's like the rest of us. He doesn't know how to talk to women. He doesn't know how to woo anyone, and so he's a bit of an everyman. The Peter Dinklage character. Now I did a little research, and the scene at the beginning where he verbosely heckles an actor.
Yes.
That's from the original story, but something how he played that I thought made him very unlikable, and it took me a while.
He's
before
really pompous.
He's a pompous ass basically. Yeah. And it took me a while before I got kind of on his side and started to care about him. And eventually Peter Dinklage won me over. Haley Bennett, I didn't think that she was particularly likable, particularly. Just from a pure magnetism that would make these two men just so in love with her. I guess I didn't get that either from her. But the movie looks great. It's got beautiful costumes. It's got it's
nominated for Best Costume Design at the Oscars this year.
Well, there you go. Is that the only nomination?
That is the only nomination.
Didn't Peter Dinklage get a nomination for a Golden Globe?
I believe for a Golden Globe, yeah.
So the movie looks great. Again, Peter Dinklage won me over after a while, but I thought the ending was relatively effective. But I felt a certain distance between myself and the characters. I didn't get super emotionally involved in the story.
I think part of that for me was that it's like they're not going to spring any surprises on me with this story, right?
Right.
So I'm just watching it kind of passively.
But that
I wasn't
going
engaged in the music.
Yeah.
And I thought the Christian character was kind of one note. I thought that the Roxanne character was really vacant. And I like Peter Dinklage.
When you say vacant, you mean just not very bright?
I just didn't think that she was offering a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I like Peter Dinklage. I think he's a great actor. And I think that nothing in this script was a real standout for him. And then Ben Mendelsohn, who plays the villain, I guess, in this.
The Duke.
Who I think is a great actor. He was given nothing to do, really.
Yeah.
And it just kind of, I walked out going like, well, he was just like, nothing grabbed me. Nothing really made me go, yes, I love that part.
What about the ending? Did you find yourself moved by the ending?
No, I was.
You were checking your watch?
I was checking my watch in the back of my eyelids at points because I was struggling to stay engaged in this movie. But what did you end up giving Cyrano, sir?
Well, I gave it a generous 3 stars.
Ooh, all right. I couldn't get there. I ended up giving it 2 out of 5 stars. I was not engaged by this. There's so many other versions of this movie. Like Jeff said, go watch Roxanne. It's a much better version of the Cyrano story. It still holds up to this day. But
Daryl Hannah,
great. Let's move on, sir.
Fred
What else
Willard.
do we have here on the marquee for the folks?
Well, I believe next, Mr. Rabbit, we are going to take a look at the film called not Studio 66, as we told you a couple weeks ago, Studio 666, starring your friends and mine, the Foo Fighters. The Foo Fighters, Studio 666, bit of a throwback, Mr. Rabbit, to the days when the Beatles or your favorites, the Monkees, played themselves in the movies. But unfortunately, I think this movie lacks the fun of A Hard Day's Night, or yes, even the fun of a movie like head. Here's the story of the film. The Foo Fighters, played, of course, by the Foo Fighters themselves, they're late to deliver their next album. Dave Grohl, as we see here, he wants a different kind of sound for their 10th album. His manager, played by the great Jeff Garlin, or maybe the not so great Jeff Garlin, if some of the stories are to be believed about him, he hooks the band up with a studio inside an eerie house that, guess what, turns out to be haunted. Turns out back in 1993, a band called Dream Widow tried to record an album there, but the lead singer became demonically possessed and, yes, killed the rest of the band. So, will history repeat itself as the Foo Fighters try to finish off their album? Now, I thought this movie started off as really a lot of fun. It was really cool to see the Foo Fighters, playing themselves in this story. They all have really good chemistry. They're all naturally, I think, fun to watch. However, I didn't feel that the movie was funny enough to be a successful comedy, and it wasn't scary or gory enough to be a successful horror picture. That is, unless you find the sight of Pat Smear eating Doritos to be hilarious, or the sight of a dead raccoon to be inherently frightening. And also, it turns out to not even work as a parody because the plot is, I thought, as stupid as most plots in most horror films, and the characters in this film turn out to be just as stupid as most people in horror films. The big question that overlies this entire film is, why doesn't the band just get the hell out of the house?
No, they got to finish the album. They're possessed. They got to finish the song.
So, yeah, okay, so go ahead. What did you think?
I felt like this movie hit a wall about an hour in.
Yeah.
And I felt like they were just spinning their tires. And the premise, the overwhelming premise for this film is this band is possessed. Dave Grohl is possessed.
Dave Grohl's possessed.
And he has to find a way to finish this song. And if once the song is finally finished, it will unlock the demon or what have you. But the thing is, we have to find a way to end this song. And I felt like that was a metaphor for this movie, because I felt like they were trying to find a way to end the movie, and they just couldn't. And it just kind of kept repeating things for quite a while. I thought there were some fun bits in this movie, like we have to play the song in L sharp. A great cameo from Lionel Richie.
That was probably my favorite part of the film.
I think that Dave Grohl has a ton of charisma, and when he plays a real jerk in this movie, it kind of worked for me. I dug that.
He's a demonically possessed jerk.
Right. And I'll say, you mentioned Pat Smear. Pat Smear, continuing, in my opinion, to play half an alien in real life. He has always creeped me out since the early 90s. I'm like, that guy's not fully human. And in this movie, it's that weird grin, and like he's not all there.
I think he's the most watchable one.
He's so weird. He's just smiling in the background of every scene. It's a pretty stupid film, a pretty thin premise when you actually think about it. But I like that they kind of leaned into the campiness in parts. It was way gorier than I thought it would be. The gore level was higher than I was expecting. Yeah.
Okay, well, there was the scene with Whitney Cummings and what's his name in bed.
Let's talk about Whitney Cummings.
We're going to talk about Whitney Cummings?
She's a worse actor than Pat Smear is. She's so bad in this. So bad. But it opens with somebody taking a hammer to the head multiple times. You have several. I mean, basically everyone gets a kill scene in this movie. I wasn't expecting that. I do agree with you. I wish that they would have found a way to lean either heavier into the comedy of the horror, or even just the weirdness of it. I felt like they tried straddling the line, and it didn't work in any one direction.
Yeah. You say that they played it campy. I don't think they played it campy enough. I would have liked to have seen a little lighter tone, or just a sillier tone, or whatever. But
felt a little confusing in there. And I think that middle section, you should have gone one way or the other, and it would have really pushed the movie in a direction.
Right.
It felt like they didn't choose a direction in the middle of the movie, and so it's like, well, 1 minute we're doing some slapstick, the next minute it's like, oh, it's some weird horror, and I wanted them to pick a route with it, because I love comedy horrors.
What's your favorite comedy horror? Put you on the spot.
Oh, man, I love, like, Shaun of the Dead, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I like those that are, like, goofy horror, Army of Darkness, those types of things.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, you say the movie hit a wall like an hour in. Maybe for me it hit a wall like an hour 20 in. I think just the resolution of the plot with outside there by the pool that they made it into holy water. I mean, I'm not going to give any more away, but it seemed to just go on forever.
I appreciated that the whole band seemed to really commit to this, though.
Yeah.
Like, they all went for it. They all were willing to kind of spoof themselves in a way. It did turn into a bit of a Scooby-Doo mystery for a little while. But I kind of came out of this wondering, like, okay, a lot of times when you would see a band doing this, you'd be like, oh, they're desperate, right? They're desperate. They're going to do something like this. Like, they're desperate for where their career is going. I kind of see as they're, like, so comfortable that they're willing to kind of take jabs at themselves. They can survive the disappointment of making a movie that bombed at the box office.
This movie bombed at the box office?
Yeah, this movie opened number 8 this weekend with $1.5 million.
I think it opened better than a movie we're going to talk about in a
couple
minutes.
It finished just ahead of Cyrano, but behind Marry Me in its 3rd week.
Oh, Marry Me was a classic.
Yeah,
it's a modern-day classic.
Yeah, all the movies we're discussing this week finished no better than 8th this weekend.
Interesting.
Yeah, not a great week, but...
yeah, well, I mean, apparently this movie was inspired by the Foo Fighters making their last album, Medicine at Midnight or Medicine After Midnight.
Okay.
Because Dave Grohl said that wherever they recorded that album felt haunted to him, and so that's why he gets story credit for this film. And so that's,
right, I was wondering about that. Yeah,
that's where the idea for the film came out of.
Nice.
You mentioned this song that they have to finish. It's like this epic 20-minute or 30-minute instrumental song. And that was another thing that disappointed me about this movie, because I consider myself to be a fan of the Foo Fighters, and you would think a movie about the Foo Fighters making an album,
we're going to tie in something great.
We're going to get a couple good new Foo Fighters songs in it, and we don't get any of that. We just get them kind of jamming endlessly.
Yep.
And it's okay, it's fine, but it's not nearly as good as maybe them cranking out a couple power pop hits.
Yeah.
So I was a little disappointed in that. And what'd you think of Will Forte?
I mean, I'm a big sucker for Will Forte.
Sure, I
love
him.
Will Forte and everything. And so he shows up in this. He's 2 scenes.
Yeah.
And this guy is fine. It's great. I enjoy him. He was the best of the people showing up randomly in this film, I thought.
There weren't that many people in the
cast, there weren't.
Really.
I mean, it's them and Jeff Garland and Whitney Cummings and Will Forte.
Yeah,
that's basically
that's about it. Yeah. And Lionel Richie.
Oh, Lionel Richie's so good. It made me laugh out loud when he showed up.
That was the highlight of the film, yeah. That's the film should have leaned more into that kind of comedy, I think.
I agree.
Okay.
I don't know. So what did you end up giving the Studio 666?
I think I gave it a generous 2.5.
You're feeling generous this week. I like
this.
I gave it a generous 3 stars. It's fine.
Okay.
It's not a movie that anyone's going to be talking about 5 years from now. I don't think it's going to ruin the career.
It's certainly not that bad. It's certainly not bad enough to ruin their career.
I think it stands right on par with most of the movies you mentioned earlier from bands. They never turn out to be...
Hard Day's Night is a classic. Come on.
Yeah.
Okay. No, apparently not. Okay.
Most musicians don't make great actors.
That's very true. Yeah. But I thought that the Foo Fighters were fun to watch in this movie. I don't think the problem was their performances.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I like it. All right.
All right.
Last film we have on the marquee this week is a film called Butter from director Paul A. Kaufman. You know Paul Kaufman as the king of Hallmark Christmas movies.
Of course we do.
Does he make a career out of these. This is a film about Butter. Butter is played by Alex Kirsting. He is a high schooler who stands out for being very obese, but somehow also blends in because he doesn't really have any close friends. He's just kind of there. He's gotten the nickname Butter from a bullying incident a few years back, and he's kind of rolled with it. He is infatuated with the popular pretty girl in class, Anna, played by McKaylee Miller. She is surrounded by a group of friends who, at best, ignore Butter, at worst, are bullying teens. Butter finds Anna online and has formed an online relationship with her, going under the pseudonym JP. They've never met nor exchanged photos, but she refers to this mysterious man JP as her boyfriend. So yeah, our protagonist Butter is pulling a catfishing scheme on the pretty girl in class. He doesn't realize, but he's surrounded by supportive adults. Firstly, his mom, played by Mira Sorvino, who she cares so much about him, but she's also an enabler. That she's confused on what to do to help her overweight son. She also has a husband who seems very distant, and so she cares very much for her baby boy. He has a band teacher played by Michael T. Williamson, who cares. A doctor played by Ravi Patel, who I thought was hilarious, who also cares, but also is kind of an enabler in his own way.
Yeah.
Because he kind of doesn't give the whole truth to him. But none of this matters because one day, in a low moment of self-esteem, Butter decides to end his life in a very public way. He creates a website, announces that he is going to eat himself to death live online on New Year's Eve. When this gets out, Butter suddenly finds himself as a bit of a celebrity in school. Suddenly, all the people who would make fun of him now want to be friends with him. Those who never noticed him or actively picked on him are befriending him, including Anna and her friends. So he kind of develops a relationship, a friendship with Anna, who still doesn't know the truth about who this internet relationship she's in is. And I found this was kind of a bit of a Cyrano situation here with Butter and JP. JP was the smooth-talking guy who was seducing Anna, and Butter was the man behind it all.
Right.
A little Cyrano situation for the internet age. But, you know, he's been lying to her this entire time. She's been very honest with him. He's been lying to her. And unfortunately, New Year's Eve is fast approaching, and no one has attempted to stop him from killing himself live on the internet. People are kind of encouraging him to do it. And it's a film that kind of drives a message about bullying, especially in the final act of this film, about how bullying can affect people, about how kind of everyone is using someone in this film, and fake friends can be secretly against you even as they're supposedly your friend. I thought Anna's story was interesting at the end, because I was wondering, like, well, why wouldn't they exchange? She's been dating this guy forever. Why haven't they even exchanged pictures, blah, blah? And then it was revealed in the third act. It's like, okay, this makes sense. I understand her, but this felt like a after-school movie to me, for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that as well. I think that it was very sitcom-y. It was very poorly written, I thought. I know it's based on a novel by Aaron Jade Lang. I have no familiarity with the novel, but I thought that the movie was very sophomorically written and full of characters that just were not believable to me.
Right, yeah.
This had no basis in reality.
None of it did. Like, it felt like a Nickelodeon movie who at the end was like, oh, we need to try and drive a message home. But
yeah,
but it's a premise that doesn't make sense. It isn't believable.
Well, you don't find the premise believable? You don't find how people deal with the premise to be believable? I didn't
Both.
find... So you don't think that this kid would really
go online commit suicide by eating himself to death online?
Yeah.
No. And the fact that
it's a high concept sort of a thing, of course, but I think if you buy that, that's fine. But I don't think the way that he becomes this celebrity, and that's the perfect word for it, at school, it just would never happen. That these kids that just one day were making fun of him are all of a sudden, his best friends.
And some of them are doing it just to push him to it.
Well, that's what we think. We're led to believe that at first, this one kid in particular, he likes to make bets, and he's betting if Butter's going to do this or that, or is going to eat that or this. But I think we're led to believe, unless I was snowballed somehow, that these kids actually ended up liking Butter.
Well, that's your resolution.
They take him out to do all sorts of crazy things, like jump in a pond, and then they go cruising fast. The dumbest part of the movie was when they're driving in this car, and they're all like, whoa, we're driving fast. And in the background, it's just the cheesiest green screen in the background.
It's so bad.
Yeah, it's really, really bad. And the other thing that doesn't work in this movie is Butter is supposed to be this just wonderful saxophonist.
Mm-hmm.
And, the scenes are just very badly mimed, and you never believe for a second that this kid's really playing the sax.
Yeah.
And so
exactly. I thought the same thing.
That undercuts a lot of it as well. But I would say that I found the cast to be relatively endearing. I thought they were charming enough. This Alex Kirsting, who plays Butter, who I think this is his first role, I think he's fine.
I actually liked Mira Sorvino in this.
Yeah,
I thought she was
she's
effective
fine.
enough as the mom.
Very predictable, though. I mean, you know the dad's going to come around. You know the mom's going to learn her lesson that she's been enabling her kid by her food art and everything, and so nothing's a surprise. And I think that the scene with Annabeth Gish at the end, where she's the doctor,
great. I love Annabeth Gish.
that is just like you said. It's just we're going to drive in case you haven't gotten anything out of this movie, here's the moral of the story, and we're going to pound it over your head. And
the problem is, I feel like they could have really gotten into a teen suicide message.
Sure.
I mean, it's a movie about teen suicide, and they just kind of stayed on the fringes of this, and instead just got kind of silly with it. And it takes a really serious topic and kind of puts this ridiculous situation and then dances around it. And I think you could have really shown how so many of these teens are hurting. If you want to talk about teens being bullied and teen suicide, and that it's not just Butter in that school that's hurting. And you could have gotten into his father and why he was hurting so much and their dynamic, but you focus solely on this one guy who is also causing as much pain as he is in. He's not a great guy. He's causing pain to people with his lies and all this stuff. And so he's a flawed protagonist. And his journey is like the only one that's supposed to matter in this movie. I thought it was kind of silly.
I think we're led to believe, though, that because he is so, outwardly different than the other kids in the film, that we're supposed to feel empathetic for him, that he has to, hide behind this online character and make friends that way. I don't think that was. I mean, yes, you're right. Is that an honest thing to do? Is that something that you should be proud of doing? Of course not. But I think we're supposed to feel like, well, that's the only way he's going to make friends because he looks like he looks.
Yeah, everyone's got problems.
Everyone's got problems. But yeah, you're right. It sort of feels like he's the only kid in this school that doesn't fit in. And of course, we know there's a female character in the film who I think her name is Penelope, and she's not.
Is she in the band?
She's seen, and she seems like she maybe has a little bit of a crush on Butter, but we don't learn anything about her character. It's almost like they
have some
took
awkward
her
interactions
story and chopped it out or something.
Yeah. Butter.
Butter.
What did you end up giving Butter?
I think I gave Butter a generous 2 stars.
Oh, wow. All right. Yeah, I give it 2.5.
Oh, you even liked it more than me.
Whatever movie. Unfortunately, for those of you in locally that want to go see this, you missed your chance because it's already come and gone from our local movie picture houses because it came in at number 22 at the box office this week. It made roughly as much as the movie that I've made has made at the theater.
Well, I haven't seen any marketing for this movie whatsoever.
No, none at all. It just showed up. It's weird.
You said we're going to go see this
Should
movie,
be like
and I said, okay.
Feels like this would be a straight-to-streaming movie. Like
yes.
This would just be on your Amazon Prime.
On Tubi.
Tubi. Oh, boy, the mark of greatness.
Get it for free on Tubi.
Got it on Tubi. Commercials. All right, let's take a look ahead at what is coming out the weekend of March 11th. We have a couple films. The first one is called The Adam Project. This stars Ryan Reynolds, Mark Ruffalo, Jennifer Garner. It's a film about a time-traveling pilot who teams up with his younger self and his late father to come to terms with his past and hopefully save the future. This is over on Netflix. We also have over on Disney Plus, Turning Red, the newest animated feature about a young girl who finds out that she has the power to turn into a red panda. That's going to be on Disney Plus. Those are the only films coming out that week. Nothing on the marquee for you. Speaking of on the marquee, we want to thank our sponsor, Marcus Theaters, the Palace here in Sun Prairie. Thank you for always providing a dream lounger for us to sit in to watch these films, whether we love them or don't. There's always popcorn in a dream lounger waiting for us. So thank you again.
Some are heated, some are not.
Some are. If it's a black seat, that's a heated seat. Be
Fair
careful.
enough,
You'll cook yourself with those. Stu is cooking. Next week, I am going to be talking about films such as The Batman, Drive My Car, and a streaming film, Fresh. I'm going to be joined by old friend Michael Selesky for all of that. I have high hopes for most of these films, but tune in next week to find out. Mr. Robbins, thank you again for joining us and giving us your wisdom, your generous scores that you offered this week. We all appreciate that.
It's always a pleasure to be here. I'll come back anytime.
All right. I'm going to hold you to that.
Except for next week.
Oh, okay, fine. But until next week, I'm Jamison.
I'm Jeff. Hey.
Thanks for watching.